On May 6, 2025, the President of Finland and the National Bureau of Investigation, NBI, released a public statement regarding Simon Ekpa, currently held in Kilmakoski Correctional Center. Simon Ekpa was arrested on November 21, 2024, along with 4 other individuals, all accused of various serious offenses. The National Bureau of Investigation, NBI, has concluded its investigation and found that 4 out of the 5 suspects have been acquitted and released. Simon Ekpa remains the only one still in custody. The reason for Simon Ekpa's continued detention is due to substantial evidence and data linking him to serious crimes, according to the National Bureau of Investigation, NBI. The completed criminal investigation has been submitted to the Deputy Prosecutor General for consideration of charges, officially moving Simon Ekpa's case toward prosecution. The case is now in the hands of Ari-Pekka Koivisto, the head of Finland's National Prosecution Authority, a known tough and experienced prosecutor. Simon Ekpa is suspected of public incitement to commit crimes with terrorist intent and participation in the activities of a terrorist group, according to the National Bureau of Investigation, NBI. The United State of Biafra government has responded with strong criticism, demanding clarity from Finnish authorities about the evidence, witnesses, and the terror group designation. The outcome of Simon Ekpa's prosecution will be decided in the coming weeks or months as his case proceeds through the Finnish legal system. Meanwhile, the United Arab Emirate, UAE, has pledged allegiance to the governments of the United State of Biafra and Burkina Faso, signaling possible geopolitical developments connected to Simon Ekpa's broader movement. On the morning of May 6, 2025, Finland woke up to an official announcement that sent shockwaves through both domestic circles and international communities closely watching the case of Simon Ekpa. Simon Ekpa, a controversial figure deeply associated with the growing Biafran independence movement and based in Finland, had been under investigation since his arrest on November 21, 2024. He had been detained along with 4 other individuals at the Kilmakoski Correctional Center. As the news broke, the Finnish President and the National Bureau of Investigation jointly confirmed what had long been expected by observers. The Finnish police had completed their criminal investigation into the case and officially transferred it to Finland's National Prosecution Authority for further action. The announcement came not only as a formal procedural update, but also as a symbol of how serious the Finnish authorities have taken this case from the outset. It was not common for the President of Finland to personally oversee a press statement related to an individual criminal case. This was a clear indication that Simon Ekpa's situation had transcended the bounds of an ordinary legal matter. It was now undeniably entangled in international diplomacy, terrorism allegations, and geopolitical tensions. Simon Ekpa's arrest had made headlines in November 2024 when he and 4 others were taken into custody by the National Bureau of Investigation. At the time, they were all suspected of serious offenses, including links to terrorism. This arrest sparked reactions across the globe, particularly in Nigeria, where Simon Ekpa is seen by many as a prominent and polarizing figure, advocating for the independence of the southeastern region of the country under the banner of the Biafran cause. The Finnish authorities maintained a tight-lipped stance for months, only occasionally releasing bits of information. But as time passed, it became clear that this was not just another case. It had wider implications. As the investigation progressed, a major development occurred. 4 out of the 5 individuals arrested with Simon Ekpa were acquitted and released. This decision was based on the findings of the Finnish National Bureau of Investigation, which concluded there was not enough evidence to implicate them in any criminal wrongdoing. Their release was swift and quietly handled, but Simon Ekpa's situation remained different. He was not released. Instead, Finnish investigators stated clearly that there was substantial and incriminating evidence linking him to serious crimes. These crimes included public incitement to commit acts of violence with a terrorist motive and active participation in the activities of a terrorist organization. This revelation intensified the spotlight on Simon Ekpa and raised deeper questions about what the Finnish authorities had discovered during their probe. The case file, now closed by the police, had been handed over to Ari-Pekka Koivisto, the current head of Finland's National Prosecution Authority. Ari-Pekka Koivisto is known as a no-nonsense legal authority in Finland. He has handled several high-profile cases, both within the country and on international platforms. People who have followed his career know that he is deeply committed to the rule of law, unshaken by political pressure or public opinion. This appointment added a layer of seriousness to Simon Ekpa's case. In legal circles, it was interpreted as a clear sign that Finnish authorities were moving forward with full determination. The news triggered an immediate response from the government of the United State of Biafra, which is the name adopted by Simon Ekpa and his supporters for the sovereign nation they seek to establish from southeastern Nigeria. The United State of Biafra's spokesperson issued a strongly worded public statement, expressing grave concerns over what they described as a politically motivated prosecution. They demanded answers from the Finnish government. Who had designated the group Simon Ekpa is allegedly part of as a terrorist group? Who were the victims? Who made the complaints to Finnish authorities? What evidence had been found to justify these serious charges? They also demanded transparency regarding the witnesses and the methodology used in the investigation. In their words, it was imperative for Finland to explain whether any terrorist activities had been carried out in Finland by Simon Ekpa or the so-called group he belonged to. The emotional tone of their statement made it clear that this was not just a legal issue to them. It was a political and diplomatic matter, one that involved issues of national sovereignty, self-determination, and international law. Simon Ekpa was not only being defended as an individual, he was being represented as a national figure and freedom fighter. His continued detention, from their point of view, was not only unjust but symbolic of global bias against African liberation movements. Despite these strong reactions, the Finnish authorities stood by their procedures. The National Bureau of Investigation emphasized that the decision to keep Simon Ekpa in custody was strictly based on law enforcement findings, not political considerations. They reaffirmed that the investigation had yielded a large amount of data and evidence that pointed towards Simon Ekpa's involvement in activities that could endanger public safety, including inciting people to commit crimes with terrorist intent. Meanwhile, inside the Kilmakoski Correctional Center, Simon Ekpa remained in custody as the only one of the original 5 suspects still behind bars. The correctional facility, known for its strict but fair standards, had become his home for several months. It was reported that Simon Ekpa had access to legal counsel and was aware of the case's progression. Yet, despite the comfort and structure of a European prison, the gravity of what lay ahead must have weighed heavily on him. He was not facing a mere fine or a short sentence. The charges he was up against were among the most serious in Finnish criminal law. As the case transferred to the National Prosecution Authority, public attention shifted to Ari-Pekka Koivisto and his team. Legal analysts began dissecting the likely charges, the legal precedents, and the implications for both domestic and international law. It was predicted that in the coming weeks or months, the Finnish courts would begin formal proceedings, marking the start of Simon Ekpa's trial. The timing remained uncertain, but the direction was clear. Finland was preparing to prosecute him. The development also prompted new waves of diplomatic conversations, especially after news broke that the United Arab Emirates had pledged political allegiance to the governments of the United State of Biafra and Burkina Faso. While the details of this alignment were not fully disclosed, the timing raised eyebrows. Was this a coincidence, or was there a broader geopolitical movement quietly forming around Simon Ekpa's ideology? Some international observers began speculating that what had started as a criminal investigation in a small Nordic country could eventually reshape power alignments across Africa and beyond. The involvement of Burkina Faso, whose young leader Ibrahim Traoré had already made headlines for shaking off Western influence, combined with the surprising backing from the United Arab Emirates, suggested something larger was unfolding. These were not countries typically associated with each other. Yet now, they seemed to be finding common ground in a shared resistance to global powers they saw as oppressive or imperialistic. Back in Finland, the media continued to cover the story extensively. Finnish citizens were curious but also divided. Some believed Simon Ekpa was a danger and that Finland was right to pursue the case rigorously. Others were more cautious, fearing that the nation's legal system was being used to pursue politically charged international goals. Among the African diaspora in Finland, particularly Nigerians and Biafrans, tensions ran even higher. Demonstrations were held, demanding justice and calling on the Finnish government to release Simon Ekpa. At the same time, legal experts in Finland stressed that the process would be fair and based purely on the rule of law. They explained that Ari-Pekka Koivisto, despite his reputation as a tough prosecutor, was also deeply committed to transparency and due process. If Simon Ekpa was innocent, the court would find him so. If he was guilty, then justice would be served. That was the message Finnish authorities continued to send to the international community. As all these developments were unfolding, people close to Simon Ekpa were reportedly preparing for a vigorous defense. His legal team was expected to challenge the evidence, the designation of any group as a terrorist organization, and possibly the jurisdiction of Finland to handle matters they claimed were essentially political and African in origin. Within Nigeria, the reactions were mixed. The federal government of Nigeria had long viewed Simon Ekpa as a troublemaker and a threat to national unity. To them, his legal troubles in Finland might serve as a blow to the Biafran cause. However, among his supporters, the charges only reinforced their belief that he was fighting a righteous battle. Pro-Biafra media outlets rallied behind him, organizing fundraising campaigns for his legal defense and calling for international human rights organizations to intervene. Over in the correctional center where Simon Ekpa was still held, sources claimed he was writing daily, preparing statements, collecting documents, and reaching out to his followers through intermediaries. Though locked behind bars, he remained a central figure in the narrative. He was still commanding attention, making headlines, and provoking reactions across multiple continents. What happens next in Simon Ekpa's case remains a topic of global interest. The National Prosecution Authority will carefully consider the findings from the National Bureau of Investigation before making the final decision to file formal charges. If those charges are filed, the case will proceed to trial. The trial will be public and the world will be watching. It will not only determine Simon Ekpa's fate, but could also influence how nations handle cases of political activism, alleged terrorism, and international law moving forward. In many ways, Simon Ekpa has become more than a man. He is now a symbol, To his supporters, he stands for freedom and the unyielding right to self-determination. To his detractors, he represents division and incitement, and to Finland, he is a test of legal integrity, international responsibility, and justice. As May unfolds and summer approaches, all eyes remain on the quiet but decisive corridors of Finland's National Prosecution Authority. There, amid documents, data, and legal precedent, the future of Simon Ekpa is being quietly shaped step by step, day by day. As the days passed after the announcement on May 6, 2025, that the Simon Ekpa case had officially been transferred to Finland's National Prosecution Authority, tensions continued to rise. In diplomatic channels, political offices, courtrooms and protest rallies, the name Simon Ekpa remained at the center of a global controversy that was becoming more complicated with each passing hour. For the authorities in Finland, the question was no longer just about whether a man had broken the law. It had become about how to uphold justice under immense political pressure while navigating international scrutiny and domestic unrest. By May 8, 2025, the legal and political ramifications of the Simon Ekpa investigation had reached the floor of the Finnish parliament. Lawmakers debated in an emergency closed-door session, reportedly discussing not just the upcoming legal proceedings, but the implications of Finland being drawn into a volatile foreign political struggle. Several members of parliament asked whether Finland's neutrality and democratic principles were being challenged by the sheer global attention the case had attracted. Leaked information from the session suggested that Finnish intelligence services had also briefed lawmakers on the international dimensions of Simon Ekpa's network, including his alleged connections with armed groups operating in Nigeria's southeastern region and possible financial trails leading to supporters in Europe, the United States, and the Middle East. Meanwhile, in Nigeria, the federal government grew increasingly vocal. The Attorney General of Nigeria, speaking at a press conference in Abuja, called on Finland to prosecute Simon Ekpa to the full extent of their law. According to the Nigerian government, Simon Ekpa's speeches, live broadcasts, and social media activities had directly inspired a number of deadly attacks across Nigeria's southeast. He was, in their words, not merely a political agitator, but a foreign-based threat to Nigerian national security. This position, however, was immediately met with fierce rebuttals from leaders of the Biafran independence movement. They argued that Simon Ekpa was being vilified simply for defending the right to self-determination as enshrined in the United Nations Charter. In an emergency broadcast on May 9, 2025, a top representative of the Biafra Liberation Government in exile claimed that Finland was bowing to pressure from Nigerian elites and Western interests who wished to crush African resistance movements under the pretext of counter-terrorism. Back in Finland, public protests intensified outside the Kilmakoski Correctional Center. Activists demanded the release of Simon Ekpa, holding banners that read, "Self-determination is not terrorism," and "Stop political persecution." The protesters, mostly members of African diaspora communities and leftist Finnish activists, camped near the gates of the prison for several nights. While the demonstrations remained peaceful, the Finnish police increased their presence, carefully monitoring the situation in case tensions flared. A pro-Ekpa rally was also planned for Helsinki's Central Square for May 11, 2025, with expectations of international attendance. Inside Kilmakoski prison, Simon Ekpa was reportedly focused and unshaken. According to a legal assistant who had met him, Simon was spending his time preparing legal documents and writing lengthy essays, some of which were smuggled to his media team and later shared on pro-Biafra news platforms. In it, Simon Ekpa described himself as a political prisoner of conscience, compared his struggle to that of Nelson Mandela, and accused the international system of criminalizing African liberation efforts. This is the end of our news update. Please click the icon on the top right corner of your screen to watch my next video. You will enjoy it. I will see you again in my next update. Enjoy the rest of your day. Goodbye for now.